Hi all, welcome to our weekly forecast for the week of April 6th through April 12th, 2025. As always, I'm going to start with the astrology for this week, talking about the major transits that we have coming up, and then we will dig into the tarot. Also, quick reminder that if you're interested in supporting my work or getting more content, more readings, more connection, you can always become a supporter on Patreon, and the link is down below in the description. Okay. So let's get into it. This is a pretty big week. We have two planets stationing direct after their retrogrades, Mercury and Venus. We also have a full moon in Libra, which is our first non-eclipse lunation in the last month. And these are all significant because they're emphasizing two particular axes in the zodiac. We have the Aries-Libra axis that is emphasized and the Virgo-Pisces axis, which is the same terrain that we've been working with for a few months now in a big way, both because of those retrogrades that I mentioned and also because our eclipses over the last month have been on those axes too. So those areas of your chart have been getting a lot of work. They've been getting a lot of focus, a lot of emphasis, and probably a lot of change. And so if you don't know your natal chart intimately, that's okay. You don't have to. But if you are interested in going a layer deeper and understanding what's been coming up for you throughout these retrogrades and throughout these eclipses, it would be great to just reference your chart and see where those signs fall. Which houses do they correspond to? Which planets or angles do you have in those signs? Because those, again, are the areas that have really been evolving and under deep focus and change. So let's get into our day-to-day forecast. Starting with Sunday, April 6th, we experienced Sun in Aries sextile Jupiter in Gemini, followed by Venus retrograde forming a trine to Mars in Cancer. And so with the Sun sextile Jupiter, this could have come through as a burst of hope or a sense of well-being. And this could have come on the heels of a big week that was pretty active for a lot of us. And I covered a lot of that stuff in last week's forecast if you're interested in referencing back to it to see kind of what the energy was and what was coming up. But this Sun-Jupiter sextile can be reinforcing, invigorating, and feel like sort of a burst of pleasant energy that comes through that helps us feel more hopeful, more optimistic, and generally endows us with a sense of well-being. And that was followed again by Venus retrograde in Pisces, forming a trine to Mars in Cancer. So this is a pretty lovely benefic aspect between Venus, the planet of love and connection and values and beauty and pleasure, and Mars, the planet of anger and conflict and disruption and fighting and violence. And yet Mars has been in Cancer for a long, long time because we experienced Mars retrograde. And this aspect between these two planets is emphasizing that there is some type of progress that's being made probably in our connections or in Venusian and Martial realms. So it could feel like a day where we're wanting to progress, where we're wanting to push something forward or act on our desires or even have kind of like a sexy time if that's in the cards or was in the cards for us. I'm recording this on Monday. On Monday, the day I'm now recording this, Venus retrograde then formed a conjunction to Saturn in Pisces, and just minutes later, Mercury stationed direct in Pisces. And so these two transits, I'm mentioning them simultaneously, and I'll also mention that Venus retrograde is forming a sextile to Uranus and Taurus because all of these transits are occurring very, very tightly together around 25 degrees of Pisces. And then, of course, Uranus around 25 degrees of Taurus. And so Pisces and Taurus houses are emphasized here at a personal level, but collectively this is a little mashup transit that's really emphasizing some of the lessons that we've been integrating or at least working through, parsing through throughout this Venus retrograde period, which began on March 1st. And although that was technically the day that Venus stationed retrograde, even before that, back to like January 28th, Venus entered the pre-retrograde shadow period, which is the time where Venus is traveling over the terrain that she'll eventually retrograde back over. And so those shadow periods are emphasizing and kind of teasing at some of the themes of the incoming retrograde. And I mention it because now that Mercury is stationing direct, Venus is conjunct Saturn, and Venus is forming a sextile to Uranus, all on Monday, there's some material that's coming up for us that is reflecting back to us the way that we've grown and evolved throughout this retrograde period. And throughout this Mercury retrograde period, there's something that maybe we're now kind of crystallizing or experiencing heightened awareness around or beginning to understand. And that could look like some type of commitment. Venus conjunct Saturn can offer us maybe like the initiation of a new commitment, sometimes the beginning of a new relationship, or the solidification of something that we've been working through or figuring out. Often, though, it requires some degree of restructuring and maybe boundaries. So if you find yourself blowing through boundaries or making choices that are out of step with your personal values, or things that cause you to kind of step out of integrity in some way, this is a really good checkpoint to ask yourself, is this really what I want to be doing? What do I want to pay focus to? What do I want to invest in? That's a really good question. Where you are putting your energy is really emblematic of what you care about. And so if you find yourself investing in things or relationships or activities or ideas that just don't feel authentic or healthy for you anymore, this is a good time to really check in with yourself and maybe make a different choice, and to really be thoughtful again about what you're investing in and what you're putting energy into. Mercury stationing direct again can be this sort of like, oh, okay, we're back and like something is getting clearer in my head, or maybe more information is coming in that's now causing me to kind of like look ahead in a different way and piece together what I've been going through and make new choices from that new awareness. And then the Venus sextile to Uranus can represent a shift in our Venusian life. So again, this might look like a little innovation in our relationships, or making a spontaneous choice, or doing something that's a little bit daring or a little bit impulsive. And that might be a beautiful thing, or again, that might be something that kind of challenges our values. And so we need to ask ourselves, is this authentic, or am I making a choice that's impulsive that could maybe get me into some tricky territory later on? On Tuesday, April 8th, the moon enters Virgo. And so it's been in Leo to begin the week. Buoyant Leo, solar energy, big and bright and buoyant. And now we're moving into Virgo, which is a sign that's more about refining, more about detail, more about pragmatism, and kind of brings us more into a serious energy after being in Leo, which is more energetic and playful. And so our lunar energy is now attuning us toward the material, and maybe we're craving like cleansing rituals, or we really want to get our house in order after a few days of play, or we're really wanting to like get ourselves to bed on time, or make some adaptations to the way that we're taking care of ourselves so that we feel a bit more grounded and stable. And then 2 days later on Thursday, the moon enters Libra. And so we move from Virgo into Libra, and now we're maybe craving more pleasantries, more connection, a sense of harmony or pleasure. So if you've been a bit more studious for the past couple days with the moon in Virgo and attending to the details and trying to empty the dishwasher and clean the sheets and take care of your body and make that appointment and do those things and file your taxes, the moon moves into Libra and we're like, now I want to go on a date. I want to maybe redecorate my living room or do something that feels more pleasurable and aesthetically pleasing and helps me to feel more connected. On Friday, April 11th, Mars in Cancer forms a trine to the North Node in Pisces. And this is a day where we might feel this burst of energy that's helping to propel us towards some type of growth that we're experiencing in our Pisces house in particular. The North Node in Pisces is drawing us into soul lessons in that territory. It's also inviting us to maybe reawaken our spiritual side. and to generally kind of step into the lessons of Pisces, which can have a lot to do with non-attachment, with forgiveness, with compassion. And so if you're needing to release something or someone, or you're needing to step toward a higher level of wisdom and compassion, this is a good time to make some concrete steps in that direction. This Mars North Node trine can again offer some propelling motion or momentum to help really kind of progress our understanding, our soul wisdom, whatever. Like, this is the time to kind of step toward that opportunity. On Saturday, the sun in Aries then forms a conjunction to Chiron in Aries. And so when we experience a sun-Chiron conjunction, this can bring up some ouch. It can bring up some material that feels a bit painful or highlight an old wound. Or if not painful, at least show us something that either still needs healing or something that we have been healing. And it's very likely this will have to do with our identity. And so if you've been experiencing insecurity or a sense of kind of just feeling far away from yourself, or just feeling kind of triggered or activated recently, this sun Chiron conjunction could potentially emphasize that and show you the places where you need a bit more reinforcement. It's a good time to be really gentle with those parts of yourself that feel tender, that feel sensitive, because Chiron, being an asteroid that is about healing and pain and kind of getting into the muck, is in Aries, again, connected to identity wounds and the parts of ourselves that feel like maybe they're threatened or dishonored or not allowed to be fully expressed. Later that day, we experience a full moon in Libra. And so again, this is our first non-eclipse lunation on the heels of 2 eclipses. And so for a lot of astrologers, they would consider that this is technically the end of eclipse season. Others would say differently, but that's one way of interpreting it, is the first non-eclipse lunation is like the end of eclipse season. And so at this point, we are preparing for Venus to station direct that same day, just like an hour after the full moon, Venus stations direct. And this full moon in Libra is really showing us something quite deep and profound about our connections, and maybe closing out a story even further, offering some degree of awakening or understanding about the way we've been connecting to other people and whatever's going on in our Libra house. And I say that because although, like, yes, Libra is a sign that often is connected to relationships, that doesn't just mean one-on-one human relationships. Like, for instance, Libra's in my 6th house. And so for me, often Libran themes are about like my relationship to my dog. Its 6th house has to do with small animals and pets. My relationship to my health, my relationship to my work and the labor and mutual aid and service that I perform. And so those are relationships too. And I say that because we often say like Libra relationships and we think like partnership only. And yes, that can be true. Yes, that can be a big, big theme with a full moon in Libra, but also consider where it's falling in your chart and what Libra means to you because of that house placement. And so I will talk about this full moon more on my Patreon. I'll release an audio reading for my patrons at the $6 and up tier. And that'll be live later this week. So that includes a full breakdown of the astrology where we go really deep into the themes that are coming up with this lunation, as well as a 3-card tarot reading. So if you're interested in that, you can sign up on Patreon, and that would be at the moon tier or up in order to get access to that. Less than an hour later, Venus then stations direct in Pisces. And so big deal. This, again, is the end of our like roughly 40-day Venus retrograde journey, which began on March 1st. And Venus is stationing at 2437 Pisces, a degree that has been emphasized in a big way by Mercury's retrograde and also by the recent eclipse. And the Virgo eclipse is what I'm referring to, which was basically opposite this point. And so it's very likely that, again, this day and this moment will emphasize some of the bigger lessons of this Venus retrograde. And if you would like, you can refer back to my Venus retrograde guide, which I published on Substack. It's totally free and accessible. And if you're needing help really like reflectively looking back at what's unfolded for you over the last 40-ish days of this Venus retrograde, that could be a helpful exercise. It also has reflection questions strewn throughout that you can use to really dig up some of the deeper themes and significations of this transit for you personally. It also includes some like bigger collective questions at the end. I'm wearing my Palestine shirt or my Palestine sweatshirt. Obviously, like I don't talk about like specifics a whole lot in these forecasts because I try to keep them pretty like globally and personally relevant. But everything that I talk about when it comes to astrology is also with the understanding that what we're experiencing collectively, politically, is deeply, deeply, deeply intertwined, relevant, and informed by what we're experiencing cosmically and personally, and there's no separation there. What we experience at a personal level is also deeply reflective of what's going on collectively. And of course, we're in a deeply unsettling moment in history. I'm recording this from the United States, where things are absolutely nuts, and where the ongoing destruction of everything that's been built to protect human beings and earth and creatures here is continually under greater and greater threats. And we see the absolute disgusting greed and sociopathy of our world leaders and the way that that's impacting people in places like Gaza, in Palestine, and elsewhere. And I just want to take this moment to acknowledge just how deeply important it is that we don't put ourselves in a silo when it comes to astrology and tarot and any spiritual practice. And I say this in part because with Venus stationing direct at 2437 Pisces, it's an important moment for us to consider the collective impact of these transits and the fact that Venus is connected to our values, what we care about, what we prioritize, who we care about, who we prioritize. And that needs to go beyond thinking about our one-on-one relationships with the people who are in our closest locality. It's super important to focus on and prioritize local community and the connections that are closest to us. And it's also incredibly important for us to remember the Piscean values of universality and compassion and connection that transcend those close nearby relationships, because everything impacts all of us. And the more we can really understand that interconnection beyond like made up borders, beyond made up nations, beyond the absolute BS of colonialism and the way that it's separated us from connection to other beings and the earth itself, the more we can move beyond that and into a Piscean understanding of this world, the better off we all are. So I will leave you with that in terms of the astrology. And now let's get into our tarot reading for this week. Beginning with our anchor card, we have the Five of Cups reversed. This is the Wild Unknown Tarot. And this Five of Cups features a horse, and it's in black and white. And this horse is looking down and appears to be grieving. The Five of Cups is a card that can have a lot to do with grief and with loss and with moving through phases of grief and loss, and really exploring the depth of emotion that those experiences bring up for us and honoring them. And when we see the Five of Cups reversed, sometimes that means that we are either finally deciding that it's time to step away from a space of grieving and from maybe feeling stuck in the past or feeling stuck in a sense of what could have been. That's one option. The other option is that we may not be feeling our feelings, and that could be halting us from moving forward. And so if you notice yourself feeling kind of like emotionally constipated, or like you're behaving as though there's some sadness or tenderness or vulnerability, but like you're not clocking it, then maybe this is the time or the week to give yourself some space to really feel those feelings and to really express and experience more catharsis so that you can truly let go of stuff that's happened in the past and move forward with a lighter load. that could be a real invitation with this full moon in Libra, and with Mercury stationing direct and Venus stationing direct, is like, we've done our processing, we've done our reflection, and now it's really time to decide, to make the choice that we're going to move forward and we're going to let go. So that could be a big message this week. What do you need to let go of, or who do you need to let go of in order to feel less encumbered? Our challenge this week is the world. And so that's in large part why I feel like this does have to do with closure or with release, because the world is the last major arcana card. It's the end of a journey. We've reached a conclusion. We've reached a point where we need to make the choice, where we're sort of like graduating from a life lesson or completing a chapter or deciding that we can only really start anew from here. And in order to do that, we really need to close the book on something that was, to take the lessons, to grieve what we've got to grieve, to feel what we've got to feel, to do our reflection. And then again, to make the choice to say, I'm ready to do this. And that requires some conscious decision making on my part. Like, I'm going to set an intention to begin again by first bringing something to a close. Finally, our gift is the Daughter of Pentacles in reverse, and aka the Page of Pentacles. We see what looks like a young deer, and they have a pentacle overhead, and there's a rainbow in the background. And there's a sense of innocence that comes up with this card. The pages are often youthful figures. They sort of are like tween vibes to me, or like young adult vibes. Someone who's learning and often stepping into more of a beginner's mindset when we see a page come up as a gift is a good move. So maybe this is an opportune moment for us to consider where we need some more reinforcement or help in order to get started on some type of new journey. There's big like ending and beginning vibes coming up this week, which makes a lot of sense with the astrology. And with the Page of Pentacles reversed as our gift, it means that maybe we need help. Maybe we're not as experienced as we thought we were, or maybe we need some advice or input. And that comes through as a gift, because when we can admit what we don't know or what we don't quite feel ready for, then that opens the door for help and for honesty. And so maybe like we committed to something and we're feeling shaky about it, or maybe we're just feeling a little bit overwhelmed, or we need some like real grounded assistance and guidance in order to move forward in a way that feels aligned and true to us. And so the Page of Pentacles is like, just be honest about where you're at. Be real about where you need support. Maybe it's checking in with yourself and asking for help with like material responsibilities if you feel overwhelmed this week. Whatever it is, asking for help is a really, really, really good move. It's a humbling move, and it's something that actually invites people into deeper intimacy with us when we can be honest about our needs and honest about where we stand. So if you feel compelled this week and you have the opportunity to invite in support, I'd really suggest that you do it and that you take genuine offers of support and care, because it could not only strengthen your relationships, but it could also really ground you in what you need and help you practice asking for support, which is always a very good practice for us as humans. Okay. Thank you for listening. I hope this was supportive. And as always, if you have feedback or thoughts or want to weigh in on how these transits are impacting you or how these cards are showing up in your life this week, I love to hear those things. I love to hear how this is sitting for you and what comes up for you personally. So feel free to comment, to, of course, like and share if what I record here resonates with you. And again, if you'd like to support my work or dive deeper, you can also book a personal reading or join me over on Patreon. Take care. Have a good one.